and welcome to the Amplifying Scientific Innovation video podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Sophia Onoye, founder and CEO of the Sophia Consulting Firm, a life science marketing and communications consultancy that was established in New York City with the goal of amplifying scientific innovation. The goal of this podcast is to showcase scientific innovation stemming from global life science companies through conversations with senior leaders who share their unique leadership journey, corporate vision, and industry outlook. My guest today is Dr. Craig L. Tendler, Vice President, Clinical Development and Global Medical Affairs, Oncology, Janssen Research and Development, LLC, one of the Janssen pharmaceutical companies of Johnson & Johnson. In this position, he's responsible for creating robust development plans and data generation activities for all products in the oncology portfolio, from late development through registration and lifecycle management. Prior to this role, Craig served as Vice President of Medical Affairs for Tibotec Therapeutics and then Ortho Biotech, where he led approximately 50 medical affairs professionals in lifecycle management and data generation for the virology and oncology franchises. Craig has overseen and coordinated more than 30 major drug approvals by national regulatory agencies, including at least 10 by the US Food and Drug Administration, FDA. Prior to joining the Janssen pharmaceutical companies of Johnson & Johnson R&D, Craig served as a Vice President of Oncology Clinical Research and Chair of the Oncology Licensing Committee at the Schering-Plough Research Institute. In addition to his pharmaceutical industry experience, he has served as an Assistant Professor of Pediatrics at the Mount Sinai School of Medicine in New York City and as a Research Fellow at the National Cancer Institute in Bethesda, Maryland. Craig earned his undergraduate degree from Cornell University, Ithaca, New York, and graduated from the Mount Sinai School of Medicine, New York City, with high honors. He's board certified in pediatrics with a subspecialty in hematology oncology. I was connected to Craig through Brian Harvey, Global Therapeutic Area and Cross-Sector Oncology Communication Leader, Janssen R&D, Johnson & Johnson External Innovation. And I'm absolutely looking forward to an enlightening discussion with Craig today. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
It's my pleasure.
Wonderful introduction spanning about 35 years of my life.
Wow. And that must be something that you should be proud of because you're an inspiration to people like myself. So thank you for all you do.
Thank you.
So my first question is my favorite question, which is, what is your definition of scientific innovation?
For me, when I think about innovation, it goes beyond any sort of drug or development program. It really is a broad process, I would say, or any process that helps us bring transformational medicines to our patient population, the focus of our therapeutic area in oncology. To do anything to bring those transformational opportunities to the patients with high unmet medical need in a more urgent way, in a more rapid way. And so innovation can come from any area. It can be operational innovation, it can be scientific, it can be regulatory innovation, but it doesn't really matter which area it comes from, if it can help us in terms of being able to develop transformational medicines for our patient population and have them more accessible, to them. That's, to me, is an innovative approach and something we embrace within the Janssen Oncology organization.
That is really a great definition. I like the focus on transformation because it's about making things better than they were before. And that really should be what innovation should be at the end of the day, right? And find a way to impact the lives of patients globally, especially, of course, based on your focus on oncology. So thank you for sharing that definition.
Yeah, I think one other thing I would like to mention is that, it's an important thing to really embrace at a team level, where everyone is really aligned around this shared vision of being able to, as you said, do things better, and really not being satisfied with the status quo. To me, that is very, very important skill set of a very effective team, where they're really looking in all spaces for innovation, because they really are not satisfied with the status quo, and often are motivated by words like, that's impossible, or no, we can't do that. And that's where we see, the greatest innovation, coming from at the team level, which is really great to see.
Right. So we have to challenge ourselves to think beyond what we think is possible. I like that. I really do. I think that that's very courageous and optimistic as well. And obviously, you've done quite a lot in your career. And this is one question I'm very curious about. What would you consider to be your most impactful professional accomplishment prior to your current role at Janssen?
Well, I would take that back to my experience of being a pediatric, hematologist, oncologist when I was on the faculty at Mount Sinai, and the ability to deal with some very challenging situations for a child, with cancer and their family, and being able to provide really optimal, support, not just the medical treatment, but taking the whole holistic approach of supporting a family and doing it in a team environment with other professionals that are key to the success of a good outcome in childhood cancer. So it's a research coordinator, a study nurse, a play therapist, a pharmacist, being part of a team that really is all dedicated to not only curing the child, but keeping a family intact. And we always said our goal was, 3 years, 5 years down the line, the goal is that someone looking at that child should never be able to determine that they've gone through, an episode, a bout of childhood cancer. And, to me, that's always been very uplifting. And to be part of that, I consider a privilege and something I'm very proud of, that I played a role as part of a team on being able to, not only in many cases, deliver cures, but really, to be able to change the natural history of a devastating disease, and allowing a child and their family to continue on a normal life. That's something I'm just honored to be part of.
That's remarkable. And as you speak, I'm just so curious now around what inspired that interest in pediatric hematology oncology. What was it that made you go for it?
I think it was twofold. One is I loved always working with children, and other than unfortunately the disease that we were dealing with, in most cases, the child was otherwise healthy and well. And it was ability to, opportunity to really take on, very challenging disease, working with children who are always very uplifting, even when they're sick. I always found a lot of inspiration and energy to never give up, because those kids never gave up. And I always enjoyed, working with the families, because I think, it's just part of nature to no matter what the background, ethnicity, anything of a family, there's that natural loving parental instincts that I just felt were very inspiring to support, and to really help them manage through these very difficult situations. So part of it was the working with children and their families, and of course the whole science of hematologic and solid tumor malignancies in the childhood setting, I found very, very interesting as well.
And that, again, very remarkable. It's funny, I was born in Nigeria, and even I've been in the US now for almost 2 decades. And that commonality around the importance of family is something that globally we can all agree on. We can disagree on a lot of things, but not on the sort of the important role that that sense of family plays in the society. And now it leads me to think about my next question for you, which is, what is your leadership mantra and how has it helped to create opportunities for team and organizational advancement, especially for minorities and women?
So I'm a very strong believer of ensuring excellence, within the team, and that when we start with that sort of premise, then I'm trying to do everything possible to ensure that the team has the right organizational sort of culture to succeed, the right people, the right shared vision and mission, and of course, providing them, the resources and support to, so they can do their jobs well.
Mm-hmm.
That includes being able to bring in diverse opinions, both different backgrounds, very, very important. And also, being able to have the respect to allow those voices to be heard, and then, of course, always to emphasize and prioritize, within the team's reward and recognition. And ultimately, I feel that when everyone understands their role in the team and is provided an opportunity to contribute, and also has a path for career advancement, those are some of the key elements that are extremely important for ensuring that we have the best possible folks on the teams and working very effectively to be able to do the challenging work of oncology drug development. So my role is a small one in that, to make sure that they have everything they need, and that we have created the right organizational culture to ensure that the maximum potential is achieved from those teams.
That's great. I mean, empowering and fostering diversity of thought is so critical, because we know that that's how we get the best intellectual capacity, the best intellectual capital, and ultimately the best products that can change people's lives, especially from an oncology perspective. And we know that Janssen's objective is to develop therapeutic alternatives that extend and improve the quality of life of cancer patients. Can you provide additional insights on what your team in particular is doing to achieve this objective of making cancer preventable?
So I think there's some key elements to achieving that goal. One is we have to have a very, very good and deep understanding of the scientific basis of the diseases and the key drivers of the diseases. And we have to have people that are fully dedicated to that effort. And that means, protecting their time and so that they really have the time to dig deep to the scientific knowledge for those particular diseases. And it's something, that we do at Janssen. We don't have a broad perspective across many different diseases in oncology. We focus on certain disease areas where we believe we have strong expertise, strong knowledge of the disease, and also the types of treatments that may be very effective. The second element is around focusing on developing good diagnostics for early detection of disease, because we believe that although we start development in very advanced patients who have undergone multiple therapies, and unfortunately those therapies stop working, we do believe that ultimately we have to bring our best regimens earlier and earlier into the disease pathway, because in those earlier disease stage settings is the best opportunity to cure patients. So it is a focus on early intervention for newly diagnosed patients, which I think will give us the best chance to have the best outcomes. And then I think that the third element is also trying to utilize multiple assets within our portfolio to begin to develop regimens, not just single agents to get single agents approved, but to build potentially curative regimens, combinations of the most active drugs that are addressing different pathogenic mechanisms and can be delivered safely together to ultimately, potentially cure at least a subset of the patients, that we're evaluating. And so I think that's the other key element of our, overall strategy in terms of our oncology, development programs.
I think that that's powerful. Of course, early intervention makes sense. In addition to that, thinking about combination therapies and how to take, existing immunotherapies, for example, and find ways to make them work for a larger patient population, whether that's combining with electroporation or whatever the case might be. I think that that's powerful. And then, of course, there's the technology piece and how to enable new solutions through digital technologies and other types of technology. So thank you for sharing that. My next question for you is one that fortunately we've discussed it before when you participated in the JP Morgan panel discussion. And we know from a recent SWOG Cancer Research Network study that it was demonstrated that less than 1 in 4 of pharmaceutical company-sponsored trials are African-American cancer patients. Can you provide more details on what your team at Janssen is doing to address disparities in clinical trial recruitment for minorities?
Yeah, I think it's, the time is upon us now to take action. We've understood the reasons, the obstacles that have, I would say, resulted in this underrepresentation of minorities in our studies, especially African Americans. And one of the things coming out of 2020 was really shining a spotlight on this, which was important. But isn't enough. I think we've come to understand that there are deep inequities in healthcare delivery and access to healthcare, access to clinical trials. And from our perspective in Janssen, as it relates to participation in clinical trials, we've put a stake in the ground this year and this coming year also, to really say that now we have to implement a set of actions to address this. And the actions that we're taking are really very much tied to the known obstacles and really trying to develop a systematic, what we call a toolkit, where this will be implemented in every one of our studies, going forward. And the toolkit is a combination of actions that relate to one, partnering in a more systematic way with minority investigators, because we know that ultimately your willingness to go on clinical trials is very much related to who is the person that's presenting the trial to you. And the reality is, if they look more like you, come from a background that's more similar to you, you're more likely to be open to participation in clinical trials. So we have special efforts ongoing to build a network, a consortium of minority investigators that we will be partnering in a more formal way than we've ever done. The second aspect is working with centers that are primarily centers that are caring for minority patients with cancer, and that includes, again, African Americans, Latino populations, to other underserved minorities, where these are not the centers that we've typically worked with in the past. Most of the sponsors work in the U.S. with the MD Andersons, Memorial Sloan Kettering, Dana-Farber. But these are not necessarily the centers where the minority populations are receiving their care. So we have identified approximately 10 major centers, sometimes affiliated with the major university centers, but not in a way that allows the patients from these hospitals to be able to participate in the clinical trials. So bringing our research support, infrastructure support to these other centers where the patients are being cared for, and now giving them access, to clinical trials, which again is something new for us, but something that now we have a dedicated effort, on board. The third piece is to think about other obstacles that even if you're at the centers working with the investigators, there are, challenges around out-of-pocket costs, which are more impacting patients who have underinsurance or uninsured patients, because often the impact of those out-of-pocket costs are greater for them than someone who might have insurance or might have Medicare, for example, government, funded insurance. So trying to now create alternative models, contracting models, where we take off the table this obstacle of out-of-pocket costs, and now in these newer models or revised sort of contracting models, the sponsor in essence will cover all of the out-of-pocket costs, so that does not become an obstacle for the patient to consider participation in our trial. And that could also include travel costs and things like that, which are now very, very clear in that they do create obstacles for minorities to come on to our trials. So it's a three-prong effort, focusing on investigator sites and patient-specific initiatives that have been obstacles in the past, and then also trying to understand at a community level what else could be done to provide education for patients, minority patients, to facilitate their participation in the clinical trials. And the fourth piece of the initiative is around modifying our internal programs and really demanding that any study team that comes forward with a request for support of a clinical trial also comes forward with a specific strategy around how they're going to enroll minority patients into that clinical trial.
Wow.
And so we believe that all four of these key elements will be very, very critical for really changing what has been a very, very sad inequity and really changing the paradigm here. And of course, we will measure it very clearly. We will look at the effect of each of these, and it is going to be somewhat of an iterative process to understand what's working, what's not, to continue to modify it, improve it, so we get to a point where we do see representation in our trials of minority patients that mimic the proportion of those patients in the U.S. population. And we do plan to extend this outside the U.S. as well.
I think that, again, this is remarkable, and the comprehensive nature of the program is, and the evolutionary piece, the fact that it's quite dynamic and it's responding to changes, and it's also sort of stepping out from what I call the usual suspects approach. Instead of going to MD Anderson, let's think about, local community hospitals where patients are more likely to go, especially African-American patients and such, and let's actually educate and train investigators that are minorities. I remember when I was training at Yale, there were not a lot of people that looked like me, but whenever I would go into the clinic setting, and patients will see me, they will always smile. For whatever reason, they don't know me personally, but it was reassuring for them to see that there was a young person in training that could potentially be helping them. And at the time I was studying triple-negative breast cancer, which, as you know, primarily affects women that are of African-American descent. So I'm just curious to see where things go, and I hope that in a year or two we can bring you back to the platform so that you can share more with us on how these program is going, because I believe the more we know about our diverse patient data, the more impactful the solutions that we're providing would be. So thank you so much for sharing that. I appreciate it.
I just want to add one other thing, which I think is important. Obviously, we couldn't do any of this without the organizational commitment of Janssen and Johnson and the dedication of resources to really address this in an impactful way. And that includes, part of the broader program that was announced recently called the Race to Health Equity, where the whole company is really looking at specific initiatives, even beyond clinical trial participation, to address this disparity and access to healthcare. And I think, as part of that, the oncology clinical trial piece is just one small segment of it, but for us, a very important one, and one that really will, begin to address in a real formal, systematic way, something unfortunately that has been, a very unfortunate thing that we absolutely have to, change the course on, because it is not part of being part, you cannot be part of a humane society,
right,
and have large segments of the population not getting the same access to healthcare, the same access to clinical trials. So we're very committed to this, and we will, hopefully be able to show the impact in a very positive way over the next few years. And I'm really excited to be part of this, with a full team, dedicated to this effort at Janssen.
That's great. Thank you for providing that additional color and clarity. It's definitely, I'm smiling from cheek to cheek. Obviously, I'm quite happy about this, and I'll definitely keep an eye out on that race, just to make sure that, I'm keeping track of all the good things you all are doing at Janssen. My next question for you is, in your opinion, of course, how sustainable are the changes that are being implemented to mitigate the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on clinical trials and drug access?
So, I mean, I can't really speak of, the details of our own, vaccine trial, other than to say that, we're hoping to deliver results from our own vaccine trial that Janssen is conducting in across the world in many countries, and hopefully in the next, few weeks we'll have the results of that, and hopefully can add to the number of vaccines that are accessible, available to patients around the world. So we're anxiously looking forward to that milestone in 2021. I could just say also that for our oncology patient population, COVID has really hit hard. Our patients are more vulnerable. And, we're certainly looking at this very carefully in all of our trials, and doing everything possible to ensure patient safety and clinical, and the integrity of the clinical trials, for all the studies. We've had several teleconferences, meetings with FDA to agree on mitigations that could be used to achieve those goals of patient safety and clinical trial integrity. And I have to say, it's just been absolutely fantastic to have their support, their input on the measures that we've taken, to actually, achieve those goals, to not forget about our patient population during COVID, and to make sure that we continue to, do the trials, conduct them, robustly, and bring the results forward in a high quality, robust way, so that they can continue to support, global regulatory approvals. And that's been really a priority for us as well.
Okay, that's great to hear. I think whenever you start to have conversations with regulators, it's definitely a step in the right direction, because the insights that you get from them can help in the development of transformative therapies, which ties back to your earlier definition of scientific innovation. Now, I'm curious, outside of what you're doing at Janssen, is there any technology or company that you're currently excited about, especially as it relates to maybe cancer clinical trial recruitment, monitoring, and data analysis, and why?
Yes, well, I will emphasize that we're very excited about the potential for data sciences to be utilized in a way that accelerates oncology drug development and facilitates regulatory decision making. There are a number of different examples where data is now more available and in a very analyzable kind of way, using some of the new technologies with natural language processing from electronic medical records, where we can begin to identify, for example, specific regions in the country, or even down to a site level, where, for example, if you're doing a biomarker selected study, you might be able to then use the data science capabilities to say, which centers are sending off, the most samples for that particular biomarker, or which areas have the highest proportion of patients with the biomarker positivity that you're looking for in your study. So you can begin to have a much more efficient approach for, let's say, selecting sites or selecting regions where you might want to do the study. And this includes even, for example, looking at minority populations that may be more at risk in a given study. So I think being able to use the available data in a way now that allows us to match patients to studies, to be able to select sites that are more likely to be able to put patients on study, I think is going to be a very important innovation that is going to become more and more useful over the next few years. But clearly we're working with some of these data science companies to develop and enhance these capabilities. Another way it could be used is even in terms of doing more streamlined studies or identifying new data on approved drugs. So let's say often done studies in a very homogeneous population. Maybe we've excluded patients with mild renal insufficiency, mild cardiac problems. Now the drug is approved, it's used in the community, and you're able, again, through data science collaborations, to start seeing, for example, what is the what is the safety profile of the drug in patients that may have not been studied in the registration trial, or maybe the drug is used sort of in a new setting that wasn't exactly in the indication, and maybe there's an opportunity there to generate, again, new data to support a new indication. So I think these are all the possibilities that are now becoming available with the data science technology. And we are working with many of these companies in collaboration to, I think, further enhance our skills here with them to accelerate oncology drug development. So I look at this as a wonderful potential, advancement, innovation to help us in our goal of getting drugs to patients faster that will have perhaps more of an impact, and then even once approved, being able to learn more about a drug through these data science collaborations once the drug is out there in the community.
I really like the continuity in your responses, because earlier on when you were defining scientific innovation, you talked about people should not be afraid to sort of embrace the impossible. And now you talk about data science sort of enabling those possibilities, especially as we think about decentralized trials. We think about all the many drugs that have already been approved and out there. Have we fully tested what their possibilities are? So thank you for really sharing the role that data science will play in fostering innovation. Now, I only have two more questions for you. And really quickly, what do you think are some key consideration factors that will be important for sustaining innovation in the life science industry?
Well, I think some of the key factors for sustaining the innovation in the whole health science field is, number one, having the prioritization and the research support to do that. That has to come both from public-private ventures, but also from government support, especially in our area, for example, for the National Cancer Institute, and other research parties, and that's very, very important for being able to foster and sustain the type of innovation that I think really is needed, and what the public is expecting to really ultimately make cancer a curable disease.
Right.
So I think that's a key element. The second key element, which the community expects, and we have to continue to find ways of doing it, is really to be able to openly and transparently collaborate with each other, which means sharing data, being able to build on success, and doing it in a very open platform type of way. And that means having access to data and being able to collaborate, across companies, across institutions, and as I said, I believe that's what is expected of us, and we have to continue to find ways to do that in a more efficient fashion.
Yeah, I think efficiency is really key because we can't keep doing things in the same old way. I've been quite impressed by how quickly we've been able to bring new vaccines to the market amid COVID-19. It shows us that, anything really could be possible. We just have to find new ways to integrate traditional drug development with emerging technology. So thank you for sharing that. Now, my final question is very simple. Do you have any final thoughts or commentary that you'd like to share with our audience before we wrap?
I would say that, from my perspective, it's the golden age of drug development, especially in oncology, and we're just really privileged to have all of the technology, the innovation, the information, the scientific information to really, bring these types of drugs forward that I think for the first time in many, many years are really having a huge impact on changing the natural history of disease, and hopefully for some patients, also delivering cures, which ultimately is what we're, motivated to do and won't stop fighting until we achieve those goals. So it's a great time to be, part of this health science type of industry, especially in oncology drug development. And, we have a lot of responsibility in that area, and we should take it seriously, and we should do it now with a high sense of urgency. As you said, very similar to what we've seen can be done with addressing a pandemic with vaccine development. Mm-hmm. I'm very, very inspired by that and want to hopefully apply all those principles even after COVID hopefully is behind us. Hopefully we can use a lot of those, innovations, lessons learned to be able to really accelerate oncology drug development and, get some of these patients the treatments they need. All patients of all ethnicities, of all race, regardless of, skin color, background, everyone should have the opportunity to have access to these transformational medicines that are coming forward. And at Janssen, we're really proud to be part of that effort.
Thank you so much for an enlightening discussion. You have me incredibly excited about this golden age of oncology and all the great things that we can do to transform patients' lives all over the world. So I appreciate your candor and the great insights that you shared. And thank you so much for coming on this platform, Dr. Craig Tendler.
Thank you, Sophia. Pleasure to do this with you.
Thank you. Have a good day.
You too. All the best. Bye-bye now.
Bye.